Recording has begun. So April 19th, 10 a.m. Fuse training. So welcome everybody. This is our first official Fuse training. And I'm calling it Fuse training. We had a little bit of fun with it yesterday, but we also came to the realization that our competition in different places in the country are using Edge. Those of you that come from Keller, they use Ignite and Bold and stuff like that. So we thought we were safe with Edge training, but I determined we were not. And so we did a USPTO search yesterday and really kind of searched the interweb, and we came up with Fuse. And one of the reasons was what we're doing in this training is primarily we are fusing, in a way, a different way of using Fuse, but we are fusing. Let me make sure my phone is not going nuts. So while I'm doing this, there we go. We're fusing real estate and lending to give you kind of a stronger platform. And part of it, of course, we want to build our lending division and promote that business, but it's not required of any of you. This is more lending in general, how you can take lending and you can use it to your advantage in a competitive environment. We're going to give you the tools to basically beat out your competition when it comes to a competitive situation, whether it's getting a listing, securing a buyer, or getting that buyer to get his offer accepted, his or her offer accepted. So there's a lot of different ways to use it, and doing this for a couple decades now, I've always done this, but I started realizing, man, if we can teach people how to use the power of lending to kind of promote their business and increase their business, then we've come up with really kind of a magic formula. It's not magic. It is just numbers. So there's much more science to it than that. And I realize the numbers can get a little bit confusing sometimes for people. So we're going to make that as easy as possible to understand, along with just general real estate principles over 8 weeks. So join us every Wednesday at 10, or don't. Up to you guys. But we do want to make sure we make this available to everybody so they can benefit from it. Okay, so there's our new Fuse logo. Thanks, Alex. Well done. Alex came up with that. Again, we're fusing real estate and lending, but we're just a little play on words, and we've got a little flame there with the lit fuse. So that is good. What do we have out there that is unmuted? Okay.
Looks like Corey.
Yep, I see Corey out there. You guys, if there's going to be any sort of extra background noise, let's see. No, it's not you, Corey. Can you mute yourself so that there's not background noise? And I don't want to mute everybody, but also we can't have background noise, can't have kids or dogs or any of that. So it's if you have something, we've got the chat room. If you have a question and you think everyone should get in on that, then just go ahead and type away your question. Say, halt, Joe, we want to talk about this, and then I'll unmute you and we can talk about it. So it is good that people can hear everybody. Let's see, Alex, everyone can hear you, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Let me in the chat.
Okay, so what we're doing today is paperwork. And we are going to focus kind of on the basics of paperwork in a real estate transaction. We're not going to get to actually fusing lending and real estate until a little bit later on. We'll start a little bit of it with sales and marketing, and then as we get into finance and how finance works, we'll show you how you can benefit from that. So right now, paperwork, pretty simple. Lynn has express forms up. I don't see them on. Yeah, I've got express forms up. Okay. Paperwork, pretty simple. When you do your first deal, those are that are veterans. When you do your first deal, paperwork's just enormously confusing. It's like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I've been able to sell a house. I've got all these people excited, and now I got to fill out paperwork. Those of us that are veterans, we look at the forms and we can kind of fill them out in our sleep. So we want to get people there, and if you know, it helps kind of refresh your perspective on paperwork, great. If you guys are newer, then follow along more closely, take some notes, and of course you can always ask questions later if you want. So we're going to start with the components of the purchase and sale agreement. For ease, I mean, I realize we're in multiple markets and different states have different forms, but they're all kind of the same. For the most part, you've got you know, your purchase and sale price, you have your contract dates, when it starts, when it's signed around, when it concludes, when closing happens, where the earnest money goes, how much the earnest money is, all that stuff. So Washington State form, since the majority of you are in Washington State, I'm going to use that as an example. Basically, with all the other forms in Oregon and Idaho are even simpler than Washington. A lot of it's on the same form for the finance, for example. Just read it very closely. I mean, one of the keys, if you have not already, make sure you print out your purchase and sale, the main forms that we go through, and make sure you read them. That's the first step in really understanding these forms. Now, they do change. Of course, those of us in Washington State, we've seen many changes over the last couple of years. It seems like they're always changing them, and every time they make a change, it's usually more confusing. So we'll get into that as well. So again, Fuse Training, Alex came up with that pretty logo, so nice job, Alex. And let's begin. Components of the purchase and sale agreement. So let's get into matrix. Okay, so the purchase and sale agreement, Form 21 in the state of Washington. So open it up and take a look at it as a PDF.
Oh, I'm doing good. I just wanted to touch base with you. I received an email from you at the beginning of the month that you said.
Okay. Is that Marissa in the background, Alex? Must be. Okay.
Yeah, I'll mute.
Tell her to mute herself. Okay, so purchase and sale agreement. Like I said, any contract has to have a start date and a stop date. Pretty simple there. So you want to fill in the date that you're filling all this out. It doesn't really matter. It's just a reference date. So if it's April 19th, but this isn't going to get signed around until April 21st, that's fine. You want to make sure you fill it out April 19th, and all the other forms that go with the purchase and sale are going to be dated the same. So this is a purchase and sale agreement dated for the 19th of April. MLS number, we all have MLS numbers, so you pop that on your purchase and sale, and then offer expiration. This one, I mean, these are pretty self-explanatory, but this one is a little bit goofy. I realize it's a competitive market. I can't stand it when an agent sends me an offer that expires in 4 hours. It's just crazy. So give at least 24 hours. I realize you don't want to have an open window of opportunity for other companies to come in and bring in a higher offer. I get that. So you don't want to have 3 or 4 days in this market, but 24 hours is about right. Or before you do it, contact the listing agent. Before you write this up, contact them and say, hey, you know, we're going to bring an offer. It's going to be a great offer. Number one, do you have any additional offers out there? Do you have any other offers coming in? A lot of times they'll just say yes to get you to panic a little bit. So you're going to have to use your gut instinct there. But and then say, okay, we want to get you this offer. How long is it going to take for your clients to respond? Can they respond by tomorrow? And or even if it's early in the day, can they respond by this afternoon so we can get going on this if we get good enough offers? So communicate with them. It's key, because then they'll also give you some information about other offers coming in or multiple offers being reviewed or anything like that. So I always call the other agent, the listing agent, and I say, hey, you know, what's the situation with this house? We want to bring an offer. We really like it. And is 24 hours a good enough time period for you to get your clients to accept this? And buyer and seller, now you always want to check any sort of tax records or any documents they've filled out. If it's a trust, you know, it could be Bigfoot Unicorn Trust, LLC, and that's all over the title paperwork, and that's how they filled out their disclosures. then you want to use that, what they've used, and put that in here in the seller part. Buyer part, obviously, your clients. Property description, the address, and then plus the parcel number. And you're going to want to include the Exhibit A in Washington. I don't believe it's law in the other states. It may be. I mean, it's going to vary state to state, but in Washington state, the Exhibit A is law. So you want to make sure you include that and get that initialed in the whole contract. Okay, purchase price, pretty simple. This is what we're going to offer. You know, the key to that is don't get cute on purchase price. In this market, I think it's common sense. Most people know that. I get incredibly frustrated with my clients when, you know, houses, let's say, you know, the heat of the summer, and that's coming up, May and June, 2 big months in real estate. And there's a $300,000 house, they really, really like it, and they want to offer $270,000. It's like, what are you thinking? Because number one, we're not going to get it. And they're just wasting everybody's time, and you're lowballing it to the point where, I'm just sharing webcam, I'm doing so, no. And so you could possibly alienate your client, and you don't want to do that. So, you know, try to talk them. This is what we do. We're the professionals that have to say, look, it's a really hot market. Inventory's down 26%. Prices are up in, you know, Spokane 9%, in Seattle 22%, Portland 20%. You know, these crazy numbers. And since those numbers are up, it's a seller's market, and we've got to get an accurate purchase price. We can't get cute here. So talk to them and find out what they do. Ultimately, we take our direction from our clients. If they want to offer $1 on a $300,000 house, so be it. We can't control that, but you may want to reevaluate them as clients if that's the case. And obviously up here, included items, you know, if always look at the listing, and if they say, hey, refrigerator, stove, washer, dryer, dishwasher, great. So just pay attention to the details of the listing and follow along so that you're not changing something up. You're not checking, hey, a dishwasher is included when there doesn't even exist a dishwasher in this house. Earnest money. Now, earnest money is pretty much required. Well, it's not required by law. It will be a problem if you don't have earnest money in this hot seller's market. So you want it to be substantial. Rule of thumb used to be 1%. If I were in Seattle, I would try to get them up to 2 or 3%. And that's because it is applied to the transaction. So it's not like, you know, you're putting $10,000 earnest money and then they just get it. I mean, that's not the way it works. It does get applied to the transaction, whether it's down payment or closing costs. And if it's not, if everything else is covered, then they'll get the money back at closing. So typically a check, I would not do a note, and held by closing agent if you can, because you don't want the selling firm to have this. Number one, we don't carry a trust fund. The trust accounts were, we got rid of ours about 4 years ago on advice from the state of Washington. They said, why on earth would you keep this trust account anymore? Because we will scrutinize it, up to the exact dime. I mean, if you're off a penny, and I actually saw this with just being off a few cents, and they really came down hard on us when we had a trust account. And I was shocked at how closely they scrutinized those trust accounts. So when you're representing your buyer, you want it to be with the neutral party, which is escrow. You don't want the other firm to control the earnest money. So protect your client and choose a closing agent there. Forfeiture of earnest money is typically what you're going to put here. It makes a stronger offer, saying, hey, if we screw up, you're going to keep our money. Now, I'm going to teach you guys ways, and you probably already know many of them, but teach you ways to protect your client's earnest money. Title company and closing agent, typically just take that from the listing agent's clue. They might have it on the listing. It might say First American or Tycor or Pacific Northwest, you know, whomever. To me, it doesn't matter. Try not to get into a fight about this. This is the smallest thing. This is like two kids fighting over the toothpaste tube. I mean, it's just not worth it. If I see so many deals, let's say, for example, we had 2,800 last year come across my desk. Rarely does title and escrow determine the outcome of anything, if ever. So really what they're doing is by choosing the title and escrow that the seller wants, you're kind of satisfying them. It's one more step in the seller's market where you can say, hey, that's great, we'll go ahead and use who you want to use. And oftentimes title, for example, has already been opened up. Preliminary title has been ordered, which I always do right when I start a transaction, make sure that prelim title is ordered, the Exhibit A is ordered, and I've got the title report so I can see if there's a cloud on it. So a lot of times the documents are already in that title company's name. To me, a title insurance company is a title insurance company. It's insurance. It's rarely ever used. If you have questions on that, give me a shout. But for the most part, and closing agents are good. The times when I see closing agents not work out, it's a personality conflict. That's almost always what it is. It's a personality conflict. They didn't communicate. And this industry is goofy. I mean, sometimes I get people get mad at me when I don't call back in 30 seconds. You know, and I could be in something like this where I'm in a meeting for 3 hours and people just go haywire over the littlest things. And so that's almost always where it comes into play. When I'm doing a deal, and especially in this seller's market, if the listing agent wants to use a certain closing agent, I'm like, sure, sounds good. I'm sure they'll be professional and we'll get this thing done. So it's up to you, your call, but it can be a fight. And whenever I see the closing agent battle begin, I'm just shocked. I'm like, why are you guys fighting over a closing agent? Really, who cares? But just be aware of that in a seller's market that can determine whether or not you get this house. Closing date. Closing date is really key because it does end the contract. So make sure you include a closing date in all your purchase and sale agreements and try to keep it out there. Take your clues from the lender. This is where, I mean, a lot of people they want to have control over this, but you know, quite honestly, the lender has more control than we do as real estate professionals. Because the lender's determining, they're the kind of maestro in this orchestra. They're determining who's doing what and the timing of it all and really what's going on there. I'm seeing a note here. Who is this from? No, you should be able to just watch and listen. Joe had express forms up earlier and may later in the meeting. Okay. Occasionally I'll just refer to chat as I see them coming in. I do want to make sure that I'm following up on your guys' messages. But so closing date's important. Give yourself 45 days if you can. I get it. It's a tight market. It makes a stronger offer if you can do it in a month. I will oftentimes put or sooner. Almost always I'll put or sooner. So if it's 45 days or sooner, I can do that. If it's going to be really tight, you know, again, talking to the listing agent, if they're like, hey, look, you know, we want out of here in 30 days. We need our money. Clients are moving to Tahiti. You know, it's just got to be 30 days. Then it's like, okay, give me a little bit of time. I'll call the lender. Can we do this in 30 days? What's the issue? You know, VA appraisal, it could be something like that. And again, Portland seems to be the worst with VA appraisers, so it could take 4 weeks just for the appraisal to come back. So you really have to determine that time period. And it's, again, it's art and science. This is not purely you put a date down and it's going to happen on that date. It's like we think we can close it, but a lot of things come up during this process, and we are the professionals to help manage, calmly manage that process to bring this transaction to close. So yeah, possession typically on closing, unless there's something else. Sometimes there's rent back. Sometimes there's a delayed possession. So just determine what's most appropriate for your client. Payment of utilities, kind of a goofy, simple little form, but we include it just because that will allow escrow to make sure all the utilities are paid and that the new buyers aren't stuck with a big bill once they take possession. Charges assessments levied before but due after closing. Now, this is a goofy one in Washington, so for everyone else, sorry. But it's basically just saying, okay, let's say, for example, an HOA has assessed a new roof for a condo, and so you've got to pay for that. The new owners are going to pay for that because they're going to move into it and they're going to take advantage of that new roof and all that stuff. So it might be assessed, but it's not going to be actually built or fixed for another year or two. Something along those lines. That's just one example. There's a lot of different things like that. Typically, we check assumed by buyer, prepaid in full by seller at closing is a red flag. If I'm representing a seller and I saw that, I'd be like, whoa, 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 wait a second. We are not going to prepay something you're going to use in the future that is just assessed now that's a normal assessment. So be careful. Again, it's always a seller's market, or it is right now. So you want to make sure you don't blow this thing up by checking the wrong box if your clients really want it. Now, if they're just an investor and they're like, well, I can take it or leave it, whatever, then you might try to get away with as much as you can. Questions? No more questions in the chat. Okay, good, good, good. Thank you. Where are we? Oh, this is a goofy new one. They added seller citizenship. Seller is not a foreign person for purposes of U.S. income taxation. I mean, that's just an attorney overthinking it. But I'm sure they had their reason for it, but they keep adding so many goofy little things in there, and it's just the nature of the world right now, very litigious world. Very simple agency disclosure. Selling broker represents buyer, listing broker, seller. If you're representing both parties, usually just use one line, and it's typically you already have the listing, so I do listing broker represents both parties if I'm dual agent. Now in dual agency, make sure you disclose it. Make sure everybody knows that you are representing both parties. Be very open about that, because that can come back to haunt us. Every state that I have dealt with is very particular about dual agency. So they want to make sure that there's equal representation. They look at me as the designated broker, and I'm a dual agent for both. And then if I assign it to different real estate agents, it's still dual agency for me. So that's just how the states look at it. But again, if you over disclose everything, you're fine. They just want to make sure the public is protected. Then obviously fill out the information on you and the company, and any sort of contact information. So email here at the company, we are paperwork@kellywright.com. And many people will get that. So if you just email everything you get to paperwork@kellywright.com, we will go ahead and set up a file for you. And that doesn't matter what state it is. Now, there's paperless pipeline, and we see everything in paperless pipeline as well. So if you upload it there, that's fine. But you can even hand deliver it. You can mail it. I mean, we've got some old-time agents. They like to fax stuff. So that's no big deal. I get a kick out of it. It's just throwing it into the big copier and scanning it, so it's not too big a deal. A lot of verbiage. Idaho, God bless them, has less verbiage than Washington. Oregon as well has less verbiage than Washington. But you can read your purchase and sale agreement in your market at your leisure. So yeah, do that some night. When you're watching the Mariners lose or you get thumped, just read your purchase and sale agreement, and or if you need to get to sleep, that'll put you to sleep pretty quickly. Okay, webcam. Oh, there I am. People can see me. I'm sorry for that. It's what God gave me. Okay, so any questions now? Checking down here. All right. And again, if you have a question, you can enter it in the chat box. I can unmute you. Let's see here. Caller 1. Everyone else unmuted, I think. Unmute this person. Okay. Good. Good to see everyone. I've got to settle in. So that's the meat of a purchase and sale agreement. Obviously, there are addendums. Alex, am I saying that right? Addendums. Someday we got to look that up. Anyway, there are lots of addendums. Yeah, we can review the listing agreement as well. Actually, that's a good segue. We can go right into that one. So when you're buying, when you're making an offer on a house, the residential real estate purchase and sale agreement, every state has a different one, but they're all kind of the same. They all have the same format, just the fields are moved around a little bit. So nothing too spectacular there. Okay, listing agreement. The state listing agreement, Seattle's one is goofy. I actually use a Spokane one. I just think it's a better form. Let's pull this one up. Let's take a look. Oh wait, that's 1B. Actually, I'll tell you what the difference is. So exclusive agency and exclusive sale and listing agreement are two different things. So exclusive agency is basically giving the seller the right to sell the house and not pay you a commission if they find a buyer. You want to avoid this form. You want to avoid exclusive agency, and you want to use exclusive sale and listing agreement. This means if they find a buyer, no big deal. You still get paid a commission on it. So any buyer that comes along, you get a commission on this. And the same thing, fill out the form as closely, just fill it out accurately. It's the seller, again, that's the biggest if right there. Is the seller a corporation? Is the seller a trust? Is the seller one person or two people, married, partners, whomever? Just make sure whomever owns the house has the right to sell it and that you've got the right name in there per their ownership. So again, I go to county tax records a lot, and it's pretty easy to go to the assessor's website, pull up a property address, and see that Joe and Henrietta Henry are the sellers. But it could be the Henry Trust, whatever, LLC or something. But just check it out and see what they want to do. Sometimes, now occasionally in a community property state, you can't just sell something without the spouse's consent. So sometimes people try that, and they're married and they try to sell it themselves, and that cannot happen unless they purchased it before they were married. So most community property states, the ones I know of, if they owned the house before they were married, then they can sell it by themselves. Okay, so the firm, Kelly Wright, real estate. Listing term, again, any contract has got a start date and an end date. So you want to make sure you've got that listing term in there. Could be 6 months, could be whatever. Talk to them. Typically 6 months is optimal. But some people are just goofy. Some sellers are like, yeah, I'll give you 30 days to sell my house and that's it. I don't work with those people very often, but I remember they can be a pain. Commonly known as the address in the city, in the county, and the zip code, as legally described on Exhibit A. Again, Washington, we have to have an Exhibit A description of the property. And then agency is seller authorized the firm to appoint you in there. In Spokane, they've got the actual firm listed with me as the designated broker and you as the broker that can that you're authorized to list that house for them. Again, list date. So you got to have a date in here, otherwise the contract it's not valid. Commission. Now, a lot of people get confused on commissions. Commissions are basically, it's one commission. Just think of it that way. You're charging this seller a commission, and then you're splitting that commission with someone else. Okay? So pretty simple. Standard commission, 6%. If you go in there, hey, what's my commission going to be? Or what am I going to pay? You're going to pay 6%. But we're going to offer 3%. We're going to offer 3% to the selling office. I get a little too much noise, so I'm going to mute. Okay, that took care of it. Caller 1, caller 4, you guys are loud. So again, chat section, if you have a question, I can unmute you and we can go from there. Okay, so you want to have a start date and a stop date. We know that, and this is the start date, the listing date. And then the 6% commission offering 3 to the, what we'll term an SOC, selling office commission, or the selling office. The terms get goofy. It's like, you know, you're a listing agent, you know, but you represent the seller. You're a buyer's agent, but you're the selling office. It's goofy. But yeah, welcome to real estate. A lot of goofy. Okay, so, but just keep track of that. You know, there's some companies out there, they'll advertise, oh, you know, 1% commission. And what they mean is, you know, 1% listing fee, they still are going to charge 3%. The state will come down on you for doing that, so don't do it. But 3% is what they're still going to have to pay. The seller's going to have to pay to the selling office. So the state wants us to over-disclose that, hey, your commission to our firm, Kelly Wright, is 4% if you're doing the reduced one. Let's say it's 6%. And then what we offer the selling office or the buyer's agent is a percentage that you can determine. So 6 and 3 is standard. Seattle, we're seeing real competitive stuff where maybe a 4% total commission, 2% on the listing side, 2% on the selling side. Determine that with your seller. Now we're going to learn later on, you know, some of the fuse stuff that we do and the fuse training and the lending, where I'm going to give you a very solid reason to always do 6%. When they say, and again, we'll learn more of this later and get into the details of it, but when a seller says, hey, you know what, these other companies are going to do a reduced commission, I'm going to show you a way to get around that and say we're going to save you even more money than that reduced commission. So it's really important you choose a professional, you choose someone who knows what they're doing, who's dedicated to you, dedicated to selling this house and making you as much money as possible. But there are things in there we can do that no other company can do. And again, I'm excited about this because I've been working on it for 10 years to try to bring it to fruition and market it the right way. And so we'll be getting into that in the next few weeks and stuff, but that is effectively what the fuse training is. So if anyone ever asks you for reduced commission, I'll give you a reason and a script so that you don't have to accept that. And I you know, typically just don't. It's like, look, you know, my time is valuable, my experience is valuable. I earned it over 10,000 transactions, and the reason you're paying me is to make sure that this thing gets sold properly and for the most money. It's about money. Everyone, you know, everyone, it's one thing about it too, everyone is just great. You know, they're fabulous agents out there. They're just wonderful. They're dedicated. They'll bake you cookies. They will wash your car. They'll do all sorts of different stuff for you. But the bottom line is just that. It's money. How much money you can make for your clients and how fast, meeting their goals, it's not just money, but meeting their goals, can you meet those? So it's really important to kind of understand what your client's needs are. I always start every meeting I have with a potential client of what are your goals? What do you want to do with this property? Where do you want to be? And how do you want to get there? It could be, hey, you know what, I want to cash out and I want to start a business with my money. Okay, well, let's figure out how we're going to do that. Let's figure out what you need. So I come from a long line in my family of financial planners, so I think a lot in those terms as well, the best way to maximize profit for a client and then what they're going to do with that profit. Going to Tahiti and then, you know, buying a couple speedboats is usually not the best plan. Okay, enough of me going on and on and on. Then, of course, naturally get the seller's signatures. Okay. Pretty simple. Every listing agreement is pretty much the same. Start date, end date, the property, the sellers, the commission, and you representing the property. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Lynn, we can talk about that in private. I'll go over it in more detail with you and what we do. So probably something you want to come in for. Let's sit down and let's overcome that. Be a good training. So tomorrow might be good, unless it's an emergency. Then come in later today. As all of you know, the Ferris High School is playing Central Valley High School, and they're both 5-0. Young Liam Kelly as a striker. We're hoping has his best game. So I will be out of here at 4 so I can go watch my son play soccer. Okay, where are we in our training? Okay, purchase and sale. Yeah, condos, multifamily, and commercial. Let me just go into that real quickly here. Let's get into the condo one because that is a little bit different. The form is higher up on the chain, I believe. There it is, Form 28. I see an audio connection issue. Okay, audio connection restored. I'm going to actually turn off my phone because in our office with everyone's phones going and all the different computers, we got 20 computers and 20 phones, and it gets to be a burden for the electronics.
Hey, Joe, Frank and Warren have a couple questions in the chat if you want to tackle those.
Yeah, let's take a quick look. There's Lynn. Lori. Lori says, also good idea to check if married couples in a divorce proceeding and contact title and escrow for instructions. Yes. Life happens and goofy things happen to title. And so you don't want to be caught up in a divorce proceeding at the very end of a transaction. Sometimes one party doesn't disclose. So you really want to know your clients. Again, know that they've got the house listed together. And you don't want to get too personal, but it also is important information to know that they're going through divorce proceedings and how that's going to shake out. So, you know, it's just honesty. It's painful honesty, but you want to make sure that you know who's going to get what and who has the authority to sign, not just now, but a month from now. So communicate with your clients about that. Lynn and Frank, let's see, what about closing date? Thought I heard 60 days versus 30 days. Frank, you know, it depends on the market. I mean, I hate, it's much more comfortable to do 45 days, but I realize you guys your backs are against the wall. You've got 4 offers, you're competing for a house, your clients are nervous. It makes it a stronger offer to close quicker. The best thing to do, okay, so everything starts with finance, and that's why I would love it if everybody ran their loans through K-Loans, and because I'll see it. I see each person's loan as well. But if they run it through us, we can say, okay, Frank, your client has got, they've got great credit, they got a great job, they got everything, this should be an easy loan. But then we start talking to them and we find out we've got a human nature issue. Well, they don't want to get us a bank statement. And in lending, absolutely fundamentally, you know, we don't make this stuff up. If we need a document, it's some underwriter that's like, look, it's black or white. You get me what I want or this loan's dead. And so people are sometimes they're really good about getting documents. It's like within minutes, just boom, here's that document, here's that document. Other people are like, well, I didn't have to do this when I did a loan 10 years ago. Well, like, no kidding, but that lending industry collapsed the Earth's economy. So, you know, we don't really want to do that anymore. So documentation is really, really important. Now, back to your question. As you guys, the people that know me, I do go off track a little bit, so just bear with me in my diatribes. I try to keep it fun. I try to enjoy life the best I can. So any little laugh counts. But so 60 days, it depends on the lender. And again, what I mentioned earlier on is if let's say you've got a VA appraisal that you have to have done in Portland. Portland's just got, it seems like there's 3 VA appraisers in that whole metro area. And so they're taking 6 weeks. At least they were. Now I think they're back down to 4 weeks or 3 weeks, but they can take a long time. So to close something in 30 days when you know the circumstances of that loan are going to take 60 days, you know, there's your answer. It's probably going to take 60 days. Again, my rule of thumb right now is I talk to the clients, potential clients, it's like, look, 45 days or less or sooner is what I put on contracts, because if we just closed a loan in 19 days, we've had a bunch that Louis and his team have done in 19, 20, 21 days. But it's, you know, the first day, once everything's signed around, the borrowers just have all their paperwork in, clean as a whistle. then we submit it and it's underwritten in 3 or 4 days and the appraisal is ordered. And so 2 weeks into it, we've got everything back. We've got the appraisal, we've got inspections, we've got everything back and it's clean as a whistle, and guess what? The underwriter signs off on it and it's clear to close. So then the closing documents are ordered and sent to escrow. So that's a nice kind of packaged 3-week close. So I wish I had a clearer answer for you, Frank, but it's really dependent on the loan, and it's dependent on your clients and who wants to close in 30 days. We've got a client that can't close in 30 days right now. She has to close in 60 days. She needs 60 days. And so it just depends on the client's needs, both buying and selling. It's not just your client. The more you communicate with the other party and the other agent, the better off the transaction will be. So, the rule of thumb was always kind of 30 days, Frank, but I think it's safer to do 45 days or sooner. And if it's 60 days, it's really out there. I mean, I'm not hearing really of any 60-day closes, but occasionally. We had a guy in Seattle a few months ago that, for whatever reason, it was a brain tick or something, he just wouldn't get us documentation. He worked at Costco, and we'd be like, look, we just need your most recent pay stub. And it would take 2 weeks. It was like pulling teeth, and he just wouldn't get it. Now, of course, when that happens, they blame the lender, for it closing late. But understand the lending process, and that's what we're going to keep teaching you guys, and understand that every situation is different. So, nothing like vague answers. All right, Warren. 1A is redundant when you're using RMLS contract. True, yes, Warren. It is pretty redundant. There's a lot of redundant forms out there. I mean, just read them carefully and see if it just goes over the same fields. Again, kind of like what we talked about, start date, end date, you as the agent, the seller, the property, and the commission. You just want to make sure all that information is in there. But a lot of redundant forms. I mean, my God, it's like, we all know attorneys make their money by just constantly adding to forms and more forms, but sometimes it seems ridiculous to those lay people like me. Go Saxons, that's right, Mike. We're hoping the Saxons dominate Central Valley. Bears are pretty good, though. Young Liam better perform, otherwise he will be grounded for a month. I'm just kidding. Bad parenting, I know. Let's see, where are we? Oh yeah, the condo. Let's see, where did that guy go? There it is. Okay, so the condo purchase and sale agreement is a little bit different, but not a whole lot. Effectively, the only difference is, and just be careful about this, effectively the difference is what unit it is and the HOA assessment. So how much are they going to pay a month? You got to be careful with that. I mean, sometimes it's $50 a month. Sometimes it's $500 a month. Certain lenders will lend on certain condos. For example, in Seattle, it has to be 7 stories or higher. There's a few lenders that'll do garden-style condos, but not very many. They don't like them for some reason. So condos are a lot quirkier. So on the front end, make sure the lender can do the type of condo that you are going to make an offer on, or that you're going to be listing as well. I mean, you don't want to list a condo and say, hey, let's go conventional financing, and then find out it can't. A lot of times, certain lenders, this is just Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guidelines, they want to make sure that more than 80% of it is owner occupied. So what that means is they don't want rentals in there. So if one guy owns half the condo units, the whole entire building, and he's renting them all out, most lenders will not lend on that. So you want to be careful about how a condo, the dynamics of a condo, where it's located, the height of it, the style of it, how many units are being rented. And then on the purchase and sale, make sure you note, what the HOA payment's going to be, what the unit is, parking unit, storage unit. If it's a new condo, the declaration. You want to get that information. And if you're helping a client buy a condo and the listing agent doesn't have the HOA paperwork ready, it tells me they're not serious or they don't really know what they're doing. that HOA paperwork should be ready right there and then, so that you don't have to go to the condo association to try to get paperwork. You know, if they're selling it, they should already have that. But unfortunately, a lot of real estate agents cut corners, so they may not have it, and ultimately you're probably going to have to go to the HOA and, you know, call up the secretary or the president and say, hey, you know, we're trying to buy a condo in that building. You know, can you get me the paperwork I need? And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's just another layer of people you have to deal with. So I always get disappointed when the listing agent does not have it available. So, and they should have the resale certificate as well. So if you have a new condo and just went up in Seattle, this big, beautiful building, that HOA should have the resale certificate, or hopefully the listing agent has already purchased that. So, yeah, new construction or conversion. You want to be careful with that. Conversion, if it was an apartment building, 6-unit apartment building, and the owner decided to convert them to condos. So that they have to go through a process with planning, county planning, and they should be given their resale certificate. So let's see here, and then all the same stuff, pertinent information about you, the company, paperwork, emails, contact information, all that. And the rest of the stuff is pretty much the same. Again, in your market, read your condo purchase and sale, and compare it to your residential purchase and sale. Commercial's a different animal. I'll actually, I'll go in this real quick. Additional forms, and we're part of the CB, Commercial Brokers Association. It covers Oregon, Idaho, Washington, California, a little bit of Nevada, and Montana. So it's not a bad thing to be a part. It's $35 a month. So if if you're going to sell a $2 million apartment building, it behooves you to be a member of the CBA for 6 months. But here's the commercial and investment real estate purchase and sale agreement. You can also do a business opportunity, so that's basically buying the building and the business, and we are able to broker those. Similar to most contracts, all contracts, again, start date, reference date, end date, purchase price, earnest money, so pretty similar. Personal check, deposited with closing agent, deliver earnest money no later than blank days after mutual acceptance. That's a little bit different than residential. So Washington law and all law, Oregon and Idaho law, apply to earnest money protecting primary residence in a residential situation. There are no laws for commercial. There's a few, but not a lot. And the reason, and I love it, the reason is the residential laws are there to protect, they're there to protect, let's say, grandma. She's buying a house and we want grandma protected. And that's fair enough, good. When you get in the commercial world, the state, the legislators, the lawyers kind of look at it like, you know, you guys are kind of all in the commercial world. If you want to sue each other, fine, as long as someone's not losing their house, their primary residence. So, oh, Warren, can the 1A be skipped? Yes, I always do, actually. I use a Spokane form, and I don't use the 1A. Now, remember, Warren's asking about the exclusive listing agreement. And you can actually do real estate with, no, I don't want to say that because I don't want to encourage anybody. Yes, you get a listing agreement. It doesn't have to be the 1A. What I was going to say is that if you don't have a documented agency agreement with a person, they are a customer. If you have an agency agreement with them, they're a client. And the difference is a client you can negotiate on behalf of. A customer you cannot. So a customer, you basically can fill out forms and all that, but you can't. Someone can't call up and go, hey, will this guy take $10,000 less? If you have an agency agreement and they give you that permission, you can negotiate on their behalf. Doesn't mean they'll sign it, but at least it gives you that permission. So that's the difference. But yeah, the 1A can be skipped. Okay, so we're commercial purchase and sale agreement. So yeah, just you can put 4 days in there. And again, if residential, get that earnest money in 2 days. Okay, 2 days, get that sucker in. 48 hours. I just simply walk it down to closing or drive down there and just say, okay, this is for, you know, let's say the closer I use here, April and at First American. Just say, okay, it's for April. Let's open up escrow. Here's the check. I get an earnest money receipt because that's very important, and we're done. And so on commercial, you could have earnest money delivered in 6 months as long as everybody agrees to it. Exhibits and addenda. Hey, wait, Alex, that's our answer right there. Addenda. Okay. The plural form, addenda. So yeah, you just basically have all this stuff in here, promissory note, deed of trust rider. I don't want to get into the details of you know, tenant estoppel certificates, but later on we can. We may do a commercial class. Feasibility, contingency. Feasibility, you know, just basically determining whether or not you can build what you want to build there or do what you want to do there. It might be converting an apartment building to condos, and then you find out from planning that you can't do that. So that's your feasibility period. Access, insurance, the same thing. Again, yeah, I don't want to get into the details of this sucker because it's a whole new class. Okay, so commercial brokers forms, the Northwest MLS folks, you have access to these forms. Everybody else, I have access to them through the CBA site. If you have a commercial deal coming online, just let me know. And we'll get you some forms and kind of talk you through it. Forms library. So let's go back here. Multifamily is similar. Multifamily is pretty much, let's see, where's the multifamily sucker? There it is, 20. Very simple, very similar, it's just units. So multifamily, if you're not into the commercial world, multifamily means 2 to 4 units. And so you can finance a property, FHA, VA, USDA, conventional. When people use conventional, it's conforming, conventional, they're interchangeable. It just means Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac compliant loans. And so 2 to 4 units, that's why a lot of times you'll see up to 2 to 4 units. And then when you get into a 5-unit building, it becomes a whole different world. That's a commercial building now. But 4 units, you could have the owner live in 1 unit, rent out the other 3, and basically live for free. And depending on the area and how much they can get for rent and all that. But we're seeing a lot of that. And I've helped buyers buy a 4-unit with no income. They have no income, and they use the income from the other 3 units as long as they're rented to qualify to buy the whole sucker. So there's some real sophisticated ways to use finance to leverage real estate, but that's for another class. Multifamily, it's all the same stuff, legal description, purchase price, earnest money, default, title insurance, closing agents, services of closing agent for utilities. Now multifamily, did I miss something? Oh, units. I have units in here. Huh. Why did I think there were units here? It might have been another state. I'll have to go back and check. So this is identical really to the regular purchase and sale. Well, the Exhibit A and the tax description is going to describe the property. Yep. I thought there were units on there. That's almost exactly the same. Okay, remember one thing about multifamily is you've got to give them 24 hours to get access to the building. We see a lot of issues with a multifamily purchase because they don't want the tenants to be disturbed. Well, ultimately the tenants have to be disturbed. And one of the things that can happen is sometimes the seller will say, okay, well, give us a full price offer, or give us a good offer that's accepted, and then we'll get you into each of the units. So that's kind of part of that feasibility. You're making sure it's feasible to do what you want to do or buy the property. And then you get into it, and you find the cockroaches and the mold and all that stuff, and they were cooking crack. And I don't know, Alex, what do they cook today? Meth, right? That's the thing. He's all embarrassed. He's like, how should I know? Anyway, they're cooking some.
I have no idea what you're talking about, though.
I know. They're cooking some sort of nonsense in there. So then you decide, hey, I'm not going to buy this thing because the tenants are absolute animals and it's torn apart. Or the price isn't right. So that feasibility period can kind of happen after the thing gets signed around. So if you have questions on multifamily purchases, let me know. And it starts with finance. Again, you can use, whenever I start going into it, there's a lot to know and understand, but the basics are you can use 75% of the rental income to qualify. So if you've got 3 units and you're going to live in one, so you're buying it as a owner-occupied, you can use 100% financing with USDA, let's say, and if the other units all rent for $500 apiece, well, then you've got $1,500 in rent, and you can use 75% of that, $1,125 as income to qualify for the loan to purchase it. So not too complicated, but kind of complicated. So if you have any questions about lending on multifamily, let me know. There's a lot that can go on, but for example, a veteran or USDA can buy it for 100% financing. You don't even have to have a job. They can actually use that income to qualify, and they can live in one. The other 3 units can pay for the mortgage and basically live for free. So living in a multifamily dwelling is a great, great idea. Someday I hope to develop many fourplexes. So anyway, that is it on multifamily. So call me or email me if you have one going on and you're not sure how to proceed. Okay, it is tea time. So cheers, everybody. All right, so earnest money. We kind of talked about earnest money a little bit before, and not too complicated, but what you're doing is you're handling the funds of the public, and that's where the state gets wigged out. Alex, wigged out is a technical term. So it goes with meth, wigged out. So anyway, they get pretty screwy. So when we get audited, and I've been through dozens of audits with multiple states, so they're all kind of the same. And they come in and they look at these files and they go, okay, what's going on with this file? Purchase and sale, whatever. You missed an initial there, you missed that. Where is the earnest money receipt? As they always ask that, where is that sucker? We usually have it because we're not going to pay you if we don't have it. But they look at it and they go, the contract is the 14th and the earnest money receipt's dated for the 18th. 4 days later, what happened? And then they start pulling out rulers and frozen salmon and hitting us over the head with them. Metaphorically, they'll do that up to a point. If we're not in compliance with their earnest money requirements, they will shut us down after many mistakes. Now, we don't make many, and we've had pretty clean audits, but earnest money is the one thing they look at and they're really adamant about. So please make sure you get that earnest money to escrow immediately, get them a copy of the full signed around purchase and sale agreement, and get that receipt from them. Not a form in the MLS that says receipt of earnest money. That's a form that you give the client when you receive it. They only care about taking that check and getting it down to escrow. Now, earnest money can be multiple different things. It does not have to be a personal check. It could be, God forbid, gold or, a cricket collection or who knows, as long as it's mutually acceptable. If it is something other than money or other than a check, if it's physical gold or something like that, let them bring it down. We do not want to handle people's portfolios or boxes of gold or trinkets from. And I joke about this stuff, but I've had it happen. We had a guy that dealt in rare coins from Roman coins that were in sunken treasure in the Mediterranean. This guy was off the charts goofy. But his whole life consisted of these gold coins, kept them in big safes, and he dealt in gold coins, including real estate. So I was like, I want nothing to do with your gold coins. I don't want to touch them. I don't want to see them. You bring them down to escrow. You do whatever you're going to do with gold coins. I am not an armored service carrier, whatever they are. Anyway, so just make sure you get Earnest Money down there, you get a receipt, and we should be good. Any questions with that, please contact me later. Contingencies. Okay, so finance, short sale inspection, selling your own home, etc. You know, there's really only a few important contingencies. Finance is probably the most important. The inspection contingencies right up there. These are the things, because most people are going to finance their home. Very few people have cash. If they have cash, great. They can close very quickly, makes for a stronger offer. But Form 22A is our financing contingency. And again, God bless Idaho. Oregon, I think, is the same way. They have the financing contingency built into the purchase and sale agreement. We have a full separate form here in Washington. Again, attached to the contract, the date. So if the contract is April 14th, this is April 14th as well. Everything attached to that contract, all addenda, are April 14th. So yeah, and then between buyer and seller, pretty standard, and the address. And then buyer obtaining one of the following loans: conventional first, VA, FHA, or other. Buyer shall pay X dollars or percentage of the purchase price down. So FHA is 3.5% down. There are programs out there, and we have them. If they've got down to 500 credit scores, I mean, you got to be like a day out of bankruptcy to have a 500 credit score. It's got to be bad. You have to try to get your credit that low. And some people do, but down to 500, we can do FHA with 10% down. A lot of people don't know that. But now you do. So 10% down FHA. Typically FHA, though, is 3.5% down to a 580 credit score. And there's always mortgage insurance on it. USDA is 100% financing. VA is 100% financing. Conventional is the minimum is 3% down with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, but we have a program that'll do 1% down, and the lender pays the other 2% down. So it's still a 3% down program, but the lender pays the other 2%. The price they extract for paying that, for their generosity, is a higher interest rate. Typically a quarter to a half point higher. But you know, if $400,000 house and you only have $4,000, well, heck, you can get a loan. And just that $4,000 down, and you know, your interest rate's 4% for a 30-year fix with us. Certainly with Bank of America or Quicken Loans or some company like that, it would be 4.5% to 5%. But that's the trade-off. Remember, in lending, a good rule of thumb is that anything that comes off of a vanilla perfect base loan, what we call par, anything that comes off of that seems really great, there's a price to it. Typically, the price is not money. The price is going to be interest rate. That's how lenders make their money. And trust me, Bank of America, Quicken Loans, they make a lot of it on every deal. So if they're charging you $3,000 in origination, trust me, they're making about $16,000 to $20,000 on the loan in total. After yield spread premium, secondary markets, selling it there, I mean, all sorts of different stuff, servicing. So they make a lot of money per loan. Don't want to get into that. But financing here, 3% of the purchase price if it's conventional is the best. VA, you can do 0% of the purchase price. FHA, 3.5% of the purchase price, and so on. USDA, 0% of the purchase price. Waiver of...
Joe,
yeah.
Excuse me. With the finance, explain, do you always, I mean, you use this addenda or addendum when you're waiting for your client to get approved. You put in an offer and they may have been pre-qualified, but you're waiting for the approval to go through. Is that kind of the scenario?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, a financing addendum, there's a couple things with that. So Mike, so buyer says they're putting 20% down, but the loan indicates buyer is putting 40% down after the contract is signed around 20. No issues with that, Mike. I mean, that's great. The more down, the better, because if an issue comes up, they can back off of that 40% and do, oh, we have to do 30% down and use the other money to pay off 2 credit cards to qualify. Great. That's healthy. That's good. That gets that loan done, and we get this transaction done. So the more money they put down, the better. It minimizes the risk to the lender. And sometimes they need that money. They don't have to put 20% down to avoid mortgage insurance. That 1% down program I talked about, you can buy out the mortgage insurance on that. Again, the price is always interest rate, usually another quarter point. And so, but if you start at 3 3/4, let's say 3.5 now is about where we are. 3.5, well, it's a quarter point to do the 1% down program. It's a quarter point to buy out the mortgage insurance. Well, now you're at 4%. Still better than Bank of America and Quicken Loans. So that's what this whole thing is about. And we're going to keep teaching you guys that. But good question, Mike, and yeah, no issues with that at all. If they want to put more down, God bless them. Alex, I have short memory. What did you ask?
Well, just so people can, you use this form when you're putting in an offer and you are your client may be pre-qualified, but you're waiting for the approval to go through. So the purchase is dependent on that financing.
And there's different degrees of being pre-approved. I mean, you know, if you want to really be properly approved, you know, you want the borrower to bring in all their paperwork, tax returns, so last 2 years tax returns, last 2 years W-2s, last 2 bank statements, latest pay stub, social security card, driver's license, investment statement. And if they bring all of that in, and the loan officer can take a look at it and go through it, and you know, it takes a couple hours. You have to scrub it, we call, looking through it, making sure, okay, yeah, this works, this works, this works. You know, that is a solid approval. That's like, hey, okay, we've got this thing approved, pretty much. And we can run DU with direct underwriting with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You know, Louis is just 20 feet from me in his office. He can run DU right now on something. So you can get that. You can get that real solid approval if you want. And I always think it's good advice. But anything can happen. So we see knuckleheads that, you know, everything gets accepted, they have great credit, and then they go buy an entire house worth of furniture and they finance it. They're so excited about it, they go buy something. They go buy a new truck, you know, with a $500 a month payment, and then their DTI is out of whack at closing. Remember, the lender, the underwriter, they're going to pull credit all the way through up until about 10 minutes before it funds. So they're going to make sure that nothing got screwed up along the way. Do not let your clients buy anything or take any additional credit out during this process. So pre-approvals, yeah, they run the gamut. You know, you can get knucklehead loan officers out there that are like, I pulled credit, they're good to go. Don't worry about it. Well, I do worry about it. So with my clients, I typically scrub them pretty hard. It's like, okay, where are you working? How long have you been working? If I don't have their financial documentation, they get 40 questions. And it's all, you know, where are you working? How long have you been working there? What do you do there? You know, what's your gross monthly income? No, not your take-home pay, your gross monthly income. What's it based on? What's your job history? I go through all of it. And so if I don't have their financial paperwork, so then this will be a situation where, you know, you call us up and I'm on the road in the middle of Oregon driving, you know, I can pull over and pull credit and pre-qualify someone. But I can't typically get their tax returns and stuff like that at that point. So if I talk to them and I ask them these questions, I've got a pretty good idea. I'm 99% sure they're going to be fine. But again, anything can change in this industry. So you got to be flexible in this industry because human nature always happens. Humans happen. We'll say that. I should make a bumper sticker. Humans happen. Okay, so financing addendum, pretty simple. Waiving it, you don't want to waive the financing addendum if they're going to use financing. Sometimes in a competitive market, the seller might force you to. So they can also ask for loan information. So like here in Washington, they can ask for, within 10 days, ask for information to the status of the buyer's loan. So did they give you everything? They make application. Did they give you all the tax returns, bank statements, W-2s, all that? And then all of a sudden, you know, 10 days in, we should have close to underwriting approval. And, you know, they might request that underwriting approval. So this financing contingency can put some pressure on the buyer to really perform lending-wise. Seller's right to terminate. The seller has the right to terminate. Well, let me put it to you this way. They can give you notice that they will terminate if you don't waive the financing contingency. And we're seeing more of that. And so what happens, this part right here, 3 days after delivery of that notice, Form 22AR may be used for this notice. So termination notice is given. Well, it doesn't mean they can just say, you know what, we got a better offer, we're going to terminate. What it means is the buyer now has to waive the financing contingency, but they can still finance it. Okay? So understand that. They can still use financing, but they're waiving the financing contingency. And if the financing fails for whatever reason, then they're not going to get their earnest money back. It's not contingent upon that financing. So they just better be darn well sure that they're going to be able to get the financing and close on time. We don't see it happen very often, but it is happening a little bit more. So if you get a situation like that, you can email me or call me and we can walk through it. Appraisal less than sales price. Oh, geez. Yeah, we're seeing that. So guess what, happy sellers? You know, when your house appreciates 15% in a year, you're going to get an appraisal less than sales price. Appraisers just aren't going to keep up with this kind of price appreciation. There aren't the comps out there to keep up with it. So it's a tricky balance that you have to kind of figure out. A lot of those offers that are getting accepted right now, they're making up for that appraisal deficiency. So we just had one about an hour ago come in, $8,000 less than the agreed upon sales price. And in a really hot market, which all these markets are now, you know, the buyers got to have some confidence in bringing cash to the table. So they would say, you know, up to $8,000, I will make up the deficiency with cash in case of a low appraisal. That's an offer a seller's going to like, even if the overall offer is thousands less than the competing offers, because it's like, you know what, an appraisal coming in low is about a 50% chance of it right now. Because the comps go back 6 months, and so it's a difficult proposition to get those comps up to speed to support what the buyer and seller have agreed to. Remember, the appraisal and the lender, they're protecting their investment. So they want to keep the price down. They want to keep it subdued, because any amount they keep it subdued under that agreed upon sales price is risk mitigation. Okay, so that's what all this is about. Lenders just want to mitigate their risk. Anyway, so if the appraisal does come in low, you give the seller a notice of low appraisal and say, hey, you know what, we have got a notice of low appraisal. You can either match the appraised price or we agree to terminate. And so now this is really kind of nuanced. This is a really important thing. When we get into really the fuse training and the lending, this is kind of what it's built for. So for example, we start with the lowest interest rate in America. We know it. K-Loans has the lowest interest rate, period. Sometimes we get people, it's like, well, it's not as low as this company said it was going to be. That's because we get into the file, we find out, oh, their credit's only 600, and they've screwed up a bunch of other things and all that. So there's always factors that play in, but just vanilla, beautiful, perfect, 20% down loan with great credit and a doctor, we're going to be at like 3.5% for a 30-year fixed. Quicken Loans, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they're at about 4 1/8 today. So we're about a half point better. Like I said earlier, if you can get the same 4% interest rate and only put 1% down and buy out the mortgage insurance, then you're in great shape. I mean, really, really good shape. It's the same payment they were going to get, they thought, with Bank of America. And then they take all that money. They only have to put 1% down. So if they were going to put 20% down on a $400,000 house, you know, that's $80,000. Now they can put $4,000 down and use $36,000, I'm sorry, $76,000 to pay off bad debt to come up with money to make up for a low appraisal. That's the key. It's like, okay, in this competitive environment, people are like, hey, we'll pay $10,000 or $20,000 more if the appraisal comes in low, up to an agreed upon ceiling. We'll pay that. Well, great. You know, the people that are looking to get houses that don't have that money, don't have that cash on hand, they panic and they're like, we don't know where to get the money. Well, you've got it right there in the down payment. Come to me and let me work through these numbers. I'm really, really good at this. And sometimes they can't. Sometimes, you know, they're tapped out and they're already at a 3% down or a 1% down program, and it is what it is. The appraisal came in low, and if the seller's not going to agree to that lower sales price, the deal's dead. Now, one little nuance as well to this is that if it's a government loan, if it's FHA or VA, it's going to stay in the system. So if they put it back on the market, like, hey, I'm going to wait for another buyer to come along. Well, that other buyer comes along and wants to finance at FHA, they're going to see that low appraisal, and they're not going to lend on it. It doesn't matter who the lender is. It's in the FHA system. So sometimes, you know, you get these sellers that are obstinate and they think they know everything, and they don't. And so, again, contact me if that's the case, and let's see if we can kind of talk them off the ledge, get them to come down in price to meet that appraised value, and move forward with the transaction so you guys get paid. Okie dokie. Loan cost provision. So, you know, basically if you want 3% closing costs, you have to be very careful with this. And this is the final kind of factor I want to get into on the finance addendum. Asking for just 3% seller concession for closing costs, it's not accurate. Again, if you've got a $400,000 purchase and you're asking for 3%, that's $12,000. The loan might only cost $6,000. You know, origination, and of course ours is a standard flat fee, but it could be $6,000, and what's happening is you're leaving $6,000 on the table. A more accurate way to do it is 1.5% in closing costs and lower the price $6,000 from $400,000 to $394,000. Everybody wins in that scenario. So again, everything in real estate, I won't say everything, a lot of what happens in real estate and the dynamics of real estate is predicated on lending. And that's why we built Kelly Wright. And so we're going to keep teaching this the best we can. But a lot of times I see 3% of the purchase price, and it can benefit the seller because they're just not going to use 3%. They only use 1.5 or 2%. And the money doesn't go back to the buyer. It just basically sits on the table. Ultimately, I guess it just goes back to the seller. But it's not being used. And so be careful about how much. Now, conversely, if it's a $50,000 purchase and you ask for 3% in closing costs, that's $1,500. That's not going to cut it. That's not enough. And that's the max you can do with a conventional conforming loan, 3%. FHA, VA, you can go to 6% in closing costs. So just remember those numbers. Let's see, any questions here? Nope. Okay. And it could be a dollar amount. It doesn't have to be a percentage. I mean, you could already have that great pre-approval that they've gone through the numbers. Like, look, it's, you know, we've locked in the rates. We know it's going to be $6,225 for closing costs. You can put that number in as well for closing costs. But in a competitive market where you've got sellers that don't want to give too much, I'm okay. That's close enough. Thanks. You don't want to ask for too much. The sellers are not going to give it. They've got another offer back here that is, you know, no closing costs, full price, or then some, and they're going to reject this offer. Those of you in Seattle and Portland, you know this. We're learning it in Spokane because we've become a pretty hot market now too, and some people are starting to learn, hey, I can't ask for closing costs. But as you guys all are learning, we can have the closing costs paid for by the lender. Okay. Earnest money inspection, we'll get to that. We already did kind of appraisal less than sales price. You know, the seller responds, and then the buyers reply to their response, and you go back and forth using particular forms. Extension of closing. Oh yeah, this one for the Truth in Lending Act, Regulation Z, because of the Dodd-Frank bill and the new TRID. So you're talking about the new disclosure forms. There's a 3-day waiting period on a lot of loans if it's not structured and disclosed properly. So if it's disclosed at the last second, then you have to wait 3 days after that disclosure. And this in Washington is an automatic extension. The seller can't say, hey, you didn't meet the closing deadline because of your screwed up financing, blah, 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 TRID thing. Well, no. By law, it's an automatic 3-day extension because it's a federal law. And that's Regulation Z, Truth in Lending Act. If any of you guys are not getting enough sleep or you're insomniacs, pull up Regulation Z and the Truth in Lending Act. It'll put you to sleep. I promise you. Okay. Pretty good. Let's go away from the financing addendum. Let's look at our agenda. Let's look at the inspection here real quickly, and then we'll move on. Inspection is 35. Bam. Okay. So inspection, we always want to make sure all the clients have a law of real estate agency pamphlet, and we also want to always encourage they get an inspection. In Washington State, in Idaho, and I think Oregon's right there with us, they've determined, the courts have determined, you can self-inspect. So one of the pleasures, and I say that facetiously, one of the pleasures of my existence are real estate agents who know everything. And I certainly don't claim to know everything. I'm learning from you guys as much as you're learning from me. But a lot of times, and this is what happened, is they said, well, it has to be by a licensed, bonded, professional inspector. You can't just get out of the contract. Well, the courts have determined that no, it can be a self-inspection. A borrower can just go up to the house, go, you know what, I don't like that oak tree. I'm done. I've inspected the house. We're getting out of this contract on the inspection contingency. So they can do that. And watching that fight happen a couple of years ago in court and with different agents, it was like, oh my God, this, just let it go. But we want to encourage, certainly we want to encourage our clients to get an inspection. And if they adamantly choose not to, fine. At least, and try to get it in writing if you can. You choose not to get an inspection. Because the state is just all over us. Did you encourage them? Did you encourage them? And then if a lawsuit happens, it's like, hey, look, we encouraged them to get an inspection. And we've had to deal with that before, a lawsuit where they claimed our agent did not encourage them enough, enough to get an inspection. They lost. But it cost me a lot of money, and I don't want to go through that again. So always just, if you have it in writing, get the inspection, let them hire an inspector. They pay for it at the time of the inspection, and the inspector spends 2-3 hours poking and prodding the house. Sewer inspection is an important thing, especially on an older house. If you have an older house that might be using those clay tiles or something like that, try to make sure that you mark may include an inspection of the sewer system. $100 more. The guy goes out there with a big old snake and scopes the whole thing, and you start seeing, it's kind of cool, really. You start seeing all the roots, or you see collapsed pieces or tiles, and you can be like, whoa, wait a second. And I've done this with my house, actually, where first house my wife and I bought in Seattle 25 years ago, within 2 months, those old tiles collapsed. And I had to get out there with a backhoe and dig and replace it, and I was young and I didn't have any money, and it was a pain. So that sewer inspection can be pretty important. Newer houses typically have much, much better sewer connections, but it doesn't mean they don't fail. So inspection contingency. Lynn. Jackie, and okay, so Jackie first. Jackie, do you recommend working out the lender-paid closing costs prior to writing the offer? Can you talk about that a little? Yeah, I can. Lender-paid, I'm going to go back to finance. So I'm going to close this down. Well, actually, just don't look at it. How about that? There's two kinds of compensation. Again, this goes back to the Dodd-Frank bill. As you guys get to know me, you'll learn that I do not love Senators Dodd and Senators Frank, who conveniently retired after this bill was signed. They determined that you can either get paid by the lender, so let's say a mortgage broker or other lenders. You can get paid by the lender themselves, or you can get paid by the borrower. If you get paid by the borrower, you get a better interest rate, and you pay the origination fee. If you get paid by the lender, voila, you don't have to pay the origination fee, so lower closing costs. But guess what? That rule always applies a higher interest rate. And I've done the numbers, I've done the math. Borrower-paid closing costs are much, much better than lender-paid. Lender-paid closing costs in the immediate period, yeah, you don't come in with as much money, but a higher interest rate on a $400,000 loan over 30 years can translate into $70,000 extra in payments. I mean, it's a lot of money. So to pay $1,000 up front or a couple $1,000s up front versus that over 30 years, it's a better proposition. Just being a finance guy, I would pay it up front. So lender-paid compensation, you get a worse interest rate, and the lender pays the compensation. So if the origination is 1%, the lender pays it, and the mortgage broker is paid that way, and it's a higher interest rate. Most companies do it this way. We don't, because I've run the numbers, and I want to make sure that we get the best interest rate. It provides for better and higher and more purchase power. It gives you more options. And so anyway, Jackie, let's see. Did I answer that? Recommend working out the lender-paid closing costs prior to writing the offer. Yes. So talk to the lender and work out the closing costs, just in general. And you can ask them, is it lender-paid or is it borrower-paid? What are the closing costs going to be, so that we can accurately get that number down on the financing addendum? Again, so it could be 1% down, or it could be 1% closing costs, or it could be 3%. $150,000 house, 3% is $4,500. That's probably about right. So again, things start with the lender and typically end with the lender. Okay, so Jackie and Lynn, is there a separate form to give buyers who choose not to inspect? Well, I think there's waiver on here. Yeah, so we're right there at the bottom. So waiver and inspection. So good question. So the inspection form, we checked, okay, inspection contingency. We want you to have this thing inspected. Look at the fields here. 10 days is typically enough time. You do want to get on the inspection right away. And what I recommend is do the inspection first, because let's say the inspection comes back, the sewer line's broken, there's mold everywhere, the whole house is just a pile of dung, and you just want out of this thing. Great. You haven't paid for an appraisal yet. So I typically do the inspection right away. It's like, after I'm coming back from closing from the escrow with my earnest money receipt, I'm on the phone with an inspector and saying, hey, Mr. Inspector, can you get out there? Oh, it's going to be 2 weeks? No, I'm going to call another inspector. You can get out there tomorrow? Fantastic. I'll meet you out there at 2. And the clients typically want to be out there so they can run through the house and see what it's all about. But, if you can get that inspection back in a few days, then it's like, hey, the house looks like it's in pretty good shape. We're in good shape to move forward and order the appraisal. You want to protect your clients. That's our job, is to protect them and their fiduciary interests. Okay, so all the dates, you guys can read the dates in your states are typically pretty standard. Sewer inspection, I would advise, $100, it goes a long way, especially on an old house. They want that beautiful old Craftsman in Wallingford, but guess what? It's 100 years old, and the sewer line's never been fixed. So most likely it's got a bunch of goofy roots down there and some sort of collapsing tile. And it can run $10,000 to fix that or more. So it's not a cheap fix. Okay. Then when you can do additional inspections. We ran into this yesterday with Kevin. Wanting to do an additional inspection, that's pretty smart. I mean, if you see a structural issue, we had a structural issue yesterday, and the house was sagging, and it's like, you know what, we're going to do an additional inspection. So just give them notice that you're going to do an additional inspection and get that inspection done, keep them in the loop, and then when you get the additional inspection done and you get the original inspection done, then you can ask for repairs in the response form. But we're still in that inspection period. The inspector said, hey, this house is sagging, seeing a lot of possible pest problems. We want to do an additional pest inspection. So give them notice and do that additional inspection if needed. Then, now the buyer's responses and replies, I'll get into that actually from this. So there's a kind of a formula we do here in Washington. Lynn, to answer your question, there's waiver of inspection right there. They've checked it, they've signed it, then we're pretty much clear there. Pre-inspection conducted. Portland and Seattle, hot markets, pre-inspection is often done, so it doesn't waste anyone's time and you don't come back, saying, hey, we want all this stuff fixed. We know what the inspection's going to say. So that happens a lot. And the neighborhood review, it's like, I had this once in Ballard where we were buying a house near the high school, came back at night, and the stadium lights were on. And these floodlights are flooding into the house, and it's like, whoa, I don't want to live in a house with these huge lights, spotlights on my house. So that was kind of a neighborhood review contingency that we got and that we used to poo-poo the deal. Alex, poo-poo is a technical term in real estate. And just so you guys know, I'm really allergic this time of year, so rubbing my nose or like, oh my God, allergies are just starting to hit me. So if I start crying on the camera, it's not that I'm sad, just really bad allergies. So
just let me know when you need some tea.
I might need some tea.
I'll grab you some.
A tissue, Tito, please, a tissue. No, I'm fine right now, but I might tell the allergies are starting to happen. And we all love the Northwest, but holy smokes, a lot of stuff in the air this time of year. Okay, so let's go back. Let me get rid of this and show you the response form, and then we can move on.
Did you see Dean's question, or did you already get to that one?
Oh, Lynn's, buyers who choose. Yeah, I got to that. Oh, wait, Jackie's.
22.
Oh, man, you guys are good. Okay, let's take a break here and let me look at these. How to incorporate it as a strategy. I'm presuming it is something you want to discuss with Louis before. Oh, no. I know what we're doing as a strategy, Jackie. Yeah. That's part of the fuse training. And again, we're fusing lending and real estate to give you guys an advantage. And I can show, and I will, when we get into the finance part of it, so we have in our curriculum, and week 4 and week 5, residential real estate lending. I need 2 classes to go over it. So we're going to get into a lot of that there, and then another one just developed. Oh, so I haven't changed the edge that to. Fuse. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to get into the details of how to use this, and we're going to get into borrower paid compensation or lender paid compensation. I'm going to show you guys wholesale interest rate sheets. Actually, I might even do that today, just because Jackie asked. But let's do it at the end of this training. And then you can kind of see how it works. And I'll show you real lifetime pricing on both lender paid compensation and borrower paid compensation. Dean, can you speak about the time frames as they pertain to 22B? I'm in a deal and the opposing agent is adamant that our 10-day inspection period started from the date of mutual acceptance and not waiving that contingency with the sale of the buyer's home. Okay, so let me get out of this sucker. 22B. Actually, let me hold off on that, Dean. Let me finish with this. I'm a very simple man, so I need to follow a train of thought. The inspection, before I close up on inspections, inspection at 35R. here in Washington, similar response forms in Oregon and Idaho, where you basically are responding saying, okay, we've done an inspection and we request modifications. This is where you would also say, oh, we want more time. We want to do an additional inspection, or we want you to fix A, B, C, and D with the house. You can list them right there or use an additional addendum if you have a lot of things. But be careful. You ask for too many things or it gets too expensive. Most sellers in this market are going to say, no way, Jose. And then you can also just say, you know what, we've inspected it and we disapprove and we're walking away. Or like, hey, we've inspected it, the house looks great, and nothing else to do here. Move along, people, we're going to buy it. And then once you give that notice, then the seller can respond. The seller can say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to fix anything, so take it as is or we're done. Or I'll fix A and B, but not C and D. And or just reject the whole thing and we're putting it back on the market. And then let's say they're going to fix only A and B, but not C and D. Then the buyer goes back to the buyer, and the buyer says, okay, we accept your response. Go fix A and B, and we'll live with C and D, and we'll fix them later when we have the money or time. So it's kind of this three-step process going back and forth, and that's the inspection response to this transaction. To be buyer's sale of contingent. So there's different, if I remember correctly, there's different times and how we start calculating time. And you can always put it here in other. You know, actually it would be the contingency form. Probably an addendum. Contingent sale on buyer's property states on or before 45 days, if not changed there. Now I'm with you, Dean. Buyer, I've always gone under the when the property is under contract, the property that is contingent, they've got to sell it, and they've got a contract signed around contract on that. That is typically when the time period starts. The clock is ticking. So yeah, I'm trying to think what. Let's do this, Dean. This is going to be fairly complicated, and I don't want to get into it right now as much. Email me the contract. Let me take a look at this one individually, and let's talk about it and figure out why they're calculating days differently. But I've always done it that way. If it's a contingent upon the buyer selling their home, wherever it is, once that home is under contract, that's when the clock starts. But I do think there's a way, if depending on the verbiage, it can start on a different period. So it could start either way, I believe, but I want to see what you guys have in writing and kind of what the contention is. And again, this gets, and we'll go back to this sucker. So we kind of cover the basics. There's a lot of complicated, detailed stuff in all these forms. You know, there's a whole bunch of them. And so there's a lot that can be, I mean, we could do a 20-hour class and probably not cover all of this. So I want to keep to the basics right now, and contingent upon sale of buyer's home and time periods is a little more advanced. So let's get into that individually, Dean. Form 17 disclosure required by a trust. Oh, that's a good form too. Yes, get in there. No. So Form 17 is not required by a trust. And so this is required. This is the seller disclosure. So Idaho, Oregon, same form, different number. But we have a seller disclosure required by law in every state. And the seller living in the house has to disclose that they have, they either are or are not occupying the property. And then all these questions: do you have right to sell the property? Then have there been any, do you have good water? Is it potable? Is it from a public source or a private source, a well or a city? Irrigation water, sewer, is that public or private? Is it a septic system? Has it been cleaned out? And then have there been any problems? Any flooding? Has the water been tainted? Do we live in Flint, Michigan? You know, all that stuff can happen where you have to disclose the problems that you've had with the house in the past. Now, if it's a trust, you haven't lived in the house. You don't know it. You know, grandma and grandpa died, and you don't know what happened to the house. So you can basically, you're exempt from disclosing. Let them know. The best way to do it is, constant communication with the other agent, and in this case it would be the selling agent for the buyer, and saying, hey, you know, my client is exempt from this because they are the trustee of the trust of grandma and grandpa who passed away unfortunately 6 months ago, and now we're just trying to sell the house for the family. So and water, sewer, structural, have there been leaks, have there been pests, problems with chimneys, foundations, decks, walkways, fireplaces, all that stuff. So they're similar, but they're different in every state. So read through the seller disclosure. They have to have a disclosure if they lived in the property, they own it, and sometimes you get obstinate sellers. Again, it just human nature happens, and knuckleheads will just put NA all the way down, or don't know. They'll just do a line all the way down one side. And I think if that ever came back in front of a judge would probably use the term knucklehead and not look favorably upon them. So I advise my clients, take the time, let me try that again. Take the time, answer each question as closely and accurately as you can. I realize that you don't know a lot of this stuff. Was there lead-based paint? You don't know. Probably not. I mean, we're getting to a point in time where there just aren't, nobody knows about lead-based paint. They didn't live in the house in 1951. So you have to just disclose honestly, and it's always best to be honest. I mean, I'm not just talking, this isn't my wife talking. It's best to be honest in this situation because, if there was a flood, great. A lot of times, that stuff's going to be determined and will be found out by the insurance company. Hey, there was a claim made 20 years ago on this property. It flooded. So best just to be honest and then just say we fixed it. Hey, there was a flood, mitigated it, fixed it. We have a sump pump now and never had a problem in 15 years. If I'm going into a house and I'm like, okay, great. I'm glad there's a sump pump now. It works. Let's get it tested. But great. Now I don't have to worry about that happening again. So no house is perfect. Sometimes when these inspections come back or the disclosure and they're honest about it, people are just like, they freak out. Our job is to keep them calm and prevent them from freaking out, prevent them from walking away from something that's just kind of normal. When I have to do my seller disclosure on my house right now, it's going to be a lot of stuff I'm going to have to disclose, but it's still a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood, and it'll be desirable for someone. So it is what it is. We have to do it. Let's be honest about it. If they ever ask, hey, should I just flub this? No. Tell it truthfully. Describe it truthfully. And then they acknowledge. Now here in the buyer's acknowledgement in Washington, this is where they want to sign in section 1. Is that Marissa again? Hey, Alex, tell Marissa she's super loud. And she knows that. So if you guys haven't met Marissa, she's a wonderful addition to our office, but she's got a heck of a voice.
Sorry about that, Joe.
No, no worries. I kind of get a kick out of it because I can tell it's her. So you want to acknowledge here. You're not waiving rights to this seller disclosure. You're just acknowledging that you've read it and you've seen it. Don't want to go down here because down here you are waiving rights. You don't want to waive your rights, and you certainly want to receive a completed seller disclosure statement. So there's the seller disclosure. Idaho, Oregon look very similar. Same questions, similar questions. Pest inspections or pests, flooding, potable water, all of that. As the roof leaked, all that kind of stuff. So there's the seller disclosure. Financing addendum. What did we talk about last week? Now we're kind of running low on time, so I want to I kind of want to wrap this up a little bit. So let's get back into our agenda. Seller disclosure, so good, we covered that. Lead-based paint form is just, it's a similar form. It's just, again, nobody knows anymore. Let's see, our lead-based paint. Why am I having a brain fart? It's up here, right? Lead-based paint. I know you guys are all going, hey, it's this form. I don't know why I can't. Well, let's do this. Ta-da! Magic. What? Goofy. Lead. Enter. There we go. 22J. Oh, God, that was a big brain fart. And in the Northwest MLS, there are manuals for these forms. I've only filled this one out thousands of times. Okay, so almost always it gets down to here. Seller has no known knowledge of lead-based paint. The house was built before 1978, and then the seller has no reports or records pertaining to lead-based paint. I've never seen the other boxes checked. And again, it's 2017, so we're talking 40 years ago. And there's just not a lot of people have lived in a house that long. And even if they did, a friend of mine just recently died at 94, but he built his house in 1965. He doesn't remember using lead-based paint. Maybe it had a lot of lead-based paint, and that's why he doesn't remember. But he just has no idea what the paint was like back then. So most people are just going to answer, don't know, don't know. And that's an honest answer. Okay. Forms library. So lead-based paint. Another one I just want to go over real quick is title contingency 22T. Bingo. So 22T, title insurance is just that. It's insurance. If you guys don't know, it's an insurance on the house, on the title of the house. So if there is a cloud on title, if there is an encumbrance that wasn't recorded, so a easement is an encumbrance, and it wasn't recorded 20 years ago, then all of a sudden you get into the house, you move in, and the neighbor's like, hey, wait a second, I can drive right across your backyard. Well, okay, maybe you can. Show me the easement, and he might have it stamped and signed, and somehow it just wasn't recorded. Then that's a cloud on title. And now you have been encumbered on your property, and then you would make a claim, a title insurance claim, and say, hey, wait a second, I didn't know about this. It wasn't on the title report you gave me. I bought a house that is now being encumbered. And they can do a bunch of things, everything from fixing it to paying you or buying the house back. So it's a big claim. It doesn't happen very often, but just remember, title insurance is insurance, and it's regulated by the insurance regulators of each state. So you do make a claim just like you would a car accident or anything like that. Adjusters come out, take a look at it. They might survey the property. They might pay for a whole bunch of stuff. But title contingency is important because we do see issues on title often enough. And so include this form with your purchase and sale, and just make sure you pay attention to title. Okay. Timelines. Oh, I love it. Okay, so timelines. How are timelines calculated? Well, okay, so we get into a purchase and sale, and before that, a listing. So great, you go out, you meet with a seller, and you bring out all the paperwork. We'll get that into. I don't know why I can't talk today. It's the T, I'm sure. You get into this new listing, and everyone's excited. Always bring out paperwork. Next week we'll talk about sales and marketing and the paperwork you're going to bring out. You get the listing, great, everybody's happy. Immediately you want to take have pictures taken or schedule a time to have pictures taken by you or a professional. You want to get the lockbox ready. You want to get a key from them along with all their listing paperwork signed. So you're walking out of there with a bunch of stuff, and now you got some to-do stuff. Get the sign ordered. Figure out a date when you want it to go active. I typically go active on Thursdays, so I can get something up and running in 48 hours if I need to, but I'd like to have a week so that I can call the sign company and say, hey, you have one of my signs. Will you go out to 123 Oak Street on Wednesday? And then I'm going to create flyers, and you can bring those out, or I'll bring them out when I put the lockbox on the house, on the door with the key in it, get the flyers in the house, whatever else you're going to do to market it. And then get the listing ready at night, again, when you're watching the Mariners lose in dramatic fashion, unfortunately, then you can get the listing all settled and all that. But I can typically do a quick listing down and dirty in 48 hours. It looks it's a pretty good listing, actually. But then it's on the market. I don't want to hit the market on a Wednesday or Thursday, drum up some business, get some excitement. Always schedule, talk to your seller about when they're going to want people to get into the house. I cringe when I hear sellers like, well, how about just Thursday afternoons? It's like, are you kidding me? You want to sell the house? How about every afternoon? And vacant's best. I mean, you want to be polite, you want to be professional, but at the same time, you have to imply or just be explicit about it, and just say, hey, when someone calls and they schedule a time to see your house, can you take your dog for a walk? Can certainly crate your dog, but can you take him for a walk and just be gone for 45 minutes? You want to make it easy on people to see the house. Once it's on the house, and it's more, the timelines are going to be more when you get an accepted offer. So we've talked about offer dates. You get an accepted offer, and you're on the clock. And so we've kind of gone over that clock. You want to get the inspection done right away. So if you're, let's go back to, if you're selling the house, you've got the listing, you want the selling agent to take care of a bunch of stuff right away, and you want to stay in communication with them as they're doing it. And so then you just kind of guide your sellers along and let them know what's happening next, and communicate with them when the appraisal is going to happen, when the inspection is going to happen, and all that good stuff. But as the selling agent, you want to get that inspection done right away, get the earnest money in, and again, on the way back from the closing office with that earnest money receipt, order the inspection. Try to get the inspector out there within 3 days if you can, and meet them out there, meet your clients out there if you can. Here, hold on a second. I'm going to shut this door to the conference room. There's some people came in the office. And they brought kids with them, which is great. We have toys in the office, and they're playing with them right now. Okay, so inspection right away, because while that inspection's going on, your clients can, for 48 hours or so, get all their loan paperwork done and make application to the lender. You want to do that right away, because the longest periods of time in the lending process are going to be underwriting, and they're going to be the appraisal. So while the inspection's happening in the first week, you want all the loan documentation and application to happen while in underwriting, so that it's underwritten in the second week. And in that second week, if you can get the appraisal done as well, or at least ordered, so that the appraisal comes back in the third week, when the inspection addendum has all been taken care of in the first week, the underwriting has been taken care of in the second week, and the appraisal comes back either clean or not clean in that late second week to third week. If it comes in clean, it's underwritten, all the conditions are met, the inspection has happened, then you're in the third week, and optimally you can go to docs in the fourth week. And there's your 30-day close. But you want to, everything, like everything in life, it starts at the beginning. No, Alex, this is not Genesis. But it starts in the beginning in real estate, and it starts with, okay, do we have, we've got the earnest money in there, we've got the inspection ordered, they are making application with the lender in the next few days, and all of that stuff is moving forward. So it is really important to stay on top of it and then communicate it with your clients. They want to know what's going on. They're kind of freaked out. It's like, oh my God, is this really going to happen? So you want to communicate with them. If you haven't talked to them at least every other day, do so. And communicate with them and let them know how things are going. I have found, because I operate fairly well without communication, like I figure everything's going along fine if I don't hear anything. I've certainly discovered 99% of humans want it the other way around. They don't care what's happening, they just want to hear from you. So, and that's what we try to do on the lending side, and I try to do with my clients. It's like, hey, even if I just say, Nothing new. We're still in underwriting, but I just wanted to touch base, see if you have any questions. Great. Then they feel like their hand is being held and they're part of the team and the process. So follow those timelines. You can get a deal done in 30 days, but you just have to jump over each hurdle as they are presented. But start the process quickly. That first few days of a signed around transaction are critical. That's when you're running around, you're getting a lot of information out and done and together and all that good stuff. So really important that you follow those timelines and do not lose track of time. If you lose track of time, then you run into issues on the back end not closing on time. When you get to the end of the transaction, and let's say the underwriter signs off on everything, you get what we call a clear to close. And you want that clear to close typically 2 days before you're actually going to be signing and closing. So make sure that everything is into the underwriter, into the closer, that the closer is communicating with the buyer and the seller and the lender as well. And they're getting documents in. When they have a clear to close, about 24 hours to get the whole loan package together and get that big stack of papers together that your buyers are going to sign. Now the seller can sign their papers before that. They can sign 2, 3, 4 days earlier, and they just basically sit and wait. It's the buyer that waits up until that last couple days or even the last day, when those loan documents come in and the deed of trust is in and all the paperwork is accurate, that they're signing. Now, most lenders, including us, can fund immediately. Wires are ordered and they can fund that same day. So if the buyer signs, everything else has been signed, and they sign at 10 a.m., we can still fund at 2 p.m. that day. Sometimes some counties shut down early, budget cuts, so the assessor's office is shutting down early. They can't take new paperwork and record it. So, and you never ever want to close or sign on a Friday. Just don't do it. Get in the habit of closing on Wednesdays and Thursdays, because if something does happen at the assessor's office, then you've got a day to fix it. If something happens with the lender and some other signature needs to happen, you've got a day to fix it. The last thing you want to do is at 2 o'clock on a Friday go, oh, it didn't fund and record. You've got to spend the weekend in a motel. So just make sure that you always close on a Wednesday or a Thursday if possible. And then we went back to that TRID, that disclosure that the lender has to make. Hopefully they've already done that. Now they're all pretty good. Everyone's kind of dialed in. It took 6 months to figure out, but everyone's dialed in so that the disclosures are sent 3 days or more before closing. So typically they're done a full week before. So it usually doesn't come up as a problem anymore, but it can. So any questions on timelines? Nope. Okay. We talked about escalation clauses, so I don't know that we have to go back into it. If you have questions on those, well, actually, let me just open one up so that you can see it. It is escalation addendum. Okay, so pretty simple, basically dated with a contract, buyer, seller, address. And what you're doing with an escalation clause is you're basically saying this is a $300,000 purchase. That's the asking price. We're willing to go up to $310,000 in $1,000 increments, not to exceed, in this part right here, not to exceed $310,000. So increased $1,000, more than the net price of the competing offer. What that means is that if there's a competing offer and they're escalating up to 306, well, their whole escalation kicks into 306. We are at 307, and that's where we fill it out down here, so that our new net purchase price is 307. Okay, so the purchase price of the competing offer is 306. Escalation amount of $1,000 here, and to 307. Okay, So, and you're going to fill that out after it's been accepted, not before. So the escalation addendum you fill out. Let's make sure these are all blank. Okay, these are all going to be blank when you provide your offer, when you send over your offer. Just these parts are going to be filled out. Okay, and so you want to make sure that when it's accepted and they say, okay, we accept your offer, we filled out this part saying the competing offer is 306, you guys are now at 307, we're under contract. Make sure you get a copy of that bona fide offer on the other side. Okay, you just can't make it up willy-nilly. But that's an escalation addendum. Now, escalation, most likely, so if you're in Seattle, there's going to be 5 offers and there's going to be 5 escalation clauses. So they all kind of leapfrog each other. They can be a little confusing. Just make sure you lay each offer out on a table and go through them carefully as to the terms and what they're asking. Purchase price, yeah, it might be $310, but they're also asking for a 3% seller contribution, and that's another $9,000 off of this. So the net price isn't as good. So you have to be very careful about the purchase and sale agreement, the financing agreement, addendum, and what they're asking for the seller to pay, hopefully zero, and then the escalation agreement and what you're escalating up to, and what increments. This could be, it could be $2, but no one's going to care. $2 it's not significant. So $1,000 is relatively significant. I wouldn't go less than that. Okay, so that is the escalation addendum. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to unmute everybody the best I can. Oh, I think I have to request. So, and then you guys can chat or you can ask me questions. Give keyboard, allow drawing, connected to audio, send, copy. Boy, what? Alex, I think I need you for this. Oh, send unmute request.
Okay. I'll send out some requests. Also, we had a few people probably had to head out to appointments or lunch or whatnot. So I just wanted everybody to know that this will be up on YouTube. Hopefully by end of day, if not tomorrow for sure.
Unmute request. Frank, Ingrid, send unmute request. Jackie, send. Let's see how this works. And yeah, so we're gonna do this on YouTube so that people can take a look at it and listen to it. Unmute request. Unmute request. Unmute request.
Thanks. Do you have a title for the
unmute request
for the posting on YouTube?
Wendy. Okay. So now I think you guys can get on there. Clint, I want to make sure. Oh, not connected. That's why. And mute. Caller 4. Who's caller 4? Oh no. But I think we got a request out to everybody. Okay. Oh, all. Unmute other people. Okay. Anyway, so that is 2 hours of forms. Now, I just want to, reiterate that these forms are a little bit different in every market. Now we're in Florida and we're entering Alabama. If the Alabama Real Estate Commission people can pull their head out of where. It's funny, they actually told me the other day when they didn't accept Idaho and Washington, the forms that they gave them, and they said, well, we need additional information from you because we do things a little bit better in Alabama. And I thought, wow, you guys must be a whole lot more sophisticated than us here in the Northwest. But anyway, so that's my own little love triangle with Alabama real estate commissioners right now. So I don't even know where I'm going with that. But the forms. So the forms are all pretty much the same, but they're all pretty much different in every state. So as we went through those, I realized Idaho and Oregon and Florida and Alabama are all different, but the same components are there. Begin date, end date, buyer, seller, price, all that kind of stuff. Look at your forms carefully. So, if you have a question, I get everyone has questions, but read them over carefully. My first default is go, hey, what's up with that form? I should read it and refresh my memory and see what it says. And plus, they change all the time. There's stuff that has been added to these forms left and right. So read the forms carefully. There's all sorts of stuff, like here in Washington, you've got lease agreements, you've got lease options, where someone leases a property with the option to buy it. They put consideration down, and they've got 2 years to get their financing in place, or they lose the consideration regardless. Or the consideration is applied to their down payment or closing cost, applied to the transaction. And they lock in a price. So 2 years, if the price goes up 30%, great. That lease optionee gets that appreciation. But if they don't have their financing in place, so they can't pull the trigger, well, the seller is not going to give them that appreciation. So lease options are great in the case of people who have bad credit and they're fixing it and they just need another year or two to be able to finance. There's private notes in here, just regular lease agreements, pet addendums, move in, move out. So you can read all of these and just kind of figure out what they're for. And if you have questions, just go ahead and send me an email or give me a shout. Remember, texting me is the best way if there is an emergency. So for example, yesterday afternoon, I probably dealt with, I'd say 30 issues. And there were times when I'm dealing with an issue and there's 4 or 5 people calling right behind them. Hopefully I got back to everybody, but it was really busy. Ultimately, there's only so much I can do. And if it's an emergency, if you're at a closing table and it's a huge deal, text me and say, I'm at a closing table. I really, really need you. Please don't say I really, really need you when it's something very minor, trivial that's going to happen 2 or 3 weeks from now, or something like that. So I do a lot of triage, and it's what's most important gets my attention, and the lesser stuff I have to kind of put on the back burner and then ultimately get to it. So if we don't have any additional questions, let me check back down here. Ingrid, thanks. Nice. Dean, I think we're pretty much there. So we've got this recorded, and Alex will get it up on YouTube. That is our goal, to basically make sure that we are YouTube capable. I can't email it to everybody because it's this monster file that wouldn't email anyway, so we determined YouTube's the best place to do it. So he'll let everybody know, and then next week we are moving on to sales and marketing and different ways to market yourself and different successes and failures and what it costs and all that good stuff. So
that's the fun stuff, Joe.
It is the fun stuff. Yeah, I mean, I like it.
Oh, it is. I like them.
Yeah, I like the market.
Paperwork can get it.
We'll get into social media, websites, SEO, Zillow, and their nonsense that everybody seems to be enamored with. But I'll share my experiences. I'll also share some of the people here at the company who have had great success with it, so I can share their experience. And then just how to market yourself a little bit better. Again, this is not the end all. This is just 2 hours of training to kind of keep us up to speed. We may get into more sophisticated training as well, but we're going to run through this for a couple, 3 months and see what happens. So, okay, we'll send out this agenda once I get Fuse written into everything. We'll send this out to everybody here shortly, and then I will send an email out as well talking about the actual training if they want to do it on YouTube. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. You can always email me directly, text me, call me, and we'll get everything done as needed. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Recording is stopped.